Chester Himes in Vintage Paperbacks. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and in this episode we're going to look at the African-American crime author Chester Himes, who wrote a lot of different great books. He was an interesting person. He was born in 1909 and he died in 1984 in Spain as an expatriate American writer. Interesting thing about him is, in a sense, he had kind of two careers. Here's some of his paperbacks. By far not all of the vintage paperbacks by him, and this is a book on him. One of the books written about him. Oops. Chester Himes by James Lundquist. And interesting thing about him is that he was, when he was a young man, he was a criminal. He was arrested for armed robbery, and he went to Ohio State Penitentiary for a number of years before he went out on parole. That's where he started writing, and became a writer, wrote fiction stories, and basically he wrote about the black experience in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s. He wrote a lot of his early books were autobiographical about being a black man in a white world and all the racial prejudice that he and others had to deal with at the time and what he saw. But he was really like kind of two writers as far as I believe, because his earlier works were of that kind of contemporary social fiction, which dealt with black experience, racism, racial topics, and all of that. And I'll show you some of those books. Those were his earlier books. And then later on, keeping very strongly to that theme, he enlarged it and expanded upon it with his crime novels in the Coffin Ed Johnson and Gravedigger Jones. That's what he called the Harlem Detective Series. And there were about, I believe there's 6 or 7 books in that series. I don't know if I have them all. I've read a bunch of them, and I really enjoyed them. I really liked them a lot. They're really, really good. And we're going to look at them now. Some of them. The first book that he wrote, and this is a first paperback printing, American Cygnet book from 756, has a James Avati cover, is If He Hollers, Let Him Go. And this was again in with his early books, in with the theme of racism, a black man being accused of rape by a white woman, and all of the struggles and problems that black men specifically, but black people as overall had to deal with in the overtly racist climate in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, the era of Jim Crow and all that went with that. So he was writing in that time period, and his books should be looked at as being books that have to do with the prejudice and the terror that was going on in that time period. Another book another paperback edition from 1956, Cygnet 1264, was The Primitive. Similar theme, and a lot of these early books were autobiographical and things that he had to deal with. He was as he became a better writer and better known, he was a contemporary and a friend of Langston Hughes and Richard Wright, other famous black authors, and even Carl Van Vechten, who wrote about the black experience in Harlem. So there were a lot of people writing these books in those days that really told like the story of how life was. Another book in the series is Dell 6918, I believe the number is, if I can read it, and it's Pink Toes. And another one in the one of his early books was from this is 1968, third printing. It's the Berkeley X885. Again, reprint of If He Hollers, Let Him Go. So these were the early books that he wrote, and then they were reprinted in paperback, and they continued to be reprinted. And then he, taking the subject matter of these early books, he put it into a hard-boiled crime detective series, and it's set in Harlem, and it has two of the toughest, most hard-boiled black detectives you ever want to meet, and it's Coffin Ed Johnson and Grave Digger Jones. And Coffin Ed and Grave Digger are tough, but they're guys that know the crime on the streets in the black community, the white community, and they're great detectives solving crimes, and the stories are incredible. The stories are just incredible. The first book in the series was For Love of Emma Bell. This is a Dell book from this is number 2697, and it was later reprinted in a Panther series in Britain as A Rage in Harlem. A Rage in Harlem is from 1960. This is from 1969. So now these are both later reprints. Originally the title was For Love of Emma Bell, and then it was changed to A Rage in Harlem. Same book. And this is the Panther Crime series, which was in the late 60s, early 70s, and you're going to see some more of those now. Coffin Ed and Grave Digger Jones is the first book. The second book, this is from 1975, and there are many earlier printings of these books and earlier reprintings. It's The Real Cool Killers. This is the movie tie-in edition. Actually, it's not a movie tie-in edition. It's not a movie tie-in. It's just a second in the series. The original paperback edition of The Real Cool Killers was Avon book T328, and that's over here. Real Cool Killers. The next book, number 3 in the series, is The Crazy Kill. Detectives Coffin Ed Johnson and Grave Digger Jones stalk a wanton murderer through the wildest underworld in America. And that underworld is Harlem in New York City, and there are two black detectives who are on the New York City police force, because the police force realizes that they need some black detectives in the black areas so that they can solve the crimes in those areas. This is from 1959. The Crazy Kill, Avon T357, and Panther Crime. It's a British, 1968. The Crazy Kill. The next book is The Big Gold Dream. This is Avon T384, and it was reprinted in England in the Panther Crime series in this edition in the late 60s or early 70s. The next book is Avon 434, All Shot Up, and this is the second Panther British printing from 1969, Panther Crime. series. One of the famous Chester Himes books is Cotton Comes to Harlem. 6 of his books were made into films, and Cotton Comes to Harlem was one of those books. These are the 2 British Panther editions in the British Panther Crime Band series. This is from 1967, Cotton Comes to Harlem, and this is from 1969, Cotton Comes to Harlem. And the last we'll look at is The Heat's On, and this is from 1969. This is the second Panther crime printing. All in all, he wrote A Rage in Harlem, The Real Cool Killers, The Crazy Kill, All Shot Up, The Big Gold Dream, Heat's On, Cotton Comes to Harlem, and Blind Man with a Pistol. Sorry, can't read my writing. Blind Man with a Pistol. And it was a really fine book written by James Lundquist about Chester Himes. And here's a picture of him, Chester Himes. There's also, I believe, on some of the books, pictures of him on the back covers. Of course, I can't find it now. Of course, I can't find it. Oh, it will be on the back of the Cygnet. There's a picture of him. And a picture of him on the Lundquist book. So, let's put these in order. His Gravedigger Jones and Coffin Ed Johnson books are, I think, right up there with Chandler, Hammett, Mickey Spillane, Jim Thompson. Somehow they haven't been given the recognition I think that they deserve, because they fit right into that category of really good, great books, great reads, and I think that you'll enjoy them if you haven't already experienced them. The early books are fine books about the social situation in the African American community, with dealing with racism and racial topics, and the Harlem Detective series certainly has plenty of that. You have racist cops that our 2 heroes, Coffin Ed and Gravedigger, have to deal with, and all kinds of. He knew the black community. He knew the criminal mind also. So all of this features in those books, and they're really excellent crime novels. On the level of Chandler and Hammett and Spillane and Jim Thompson. They're right up there with him, and I think he deserves to be credited in that category of the upper echelon of hard-boiled and really excellent crime writers. There's also another book that I just want to mention. There's a book by James Salas, which I don't have, about Chester Himes, which is a really excellent book. Salas is a terrific writer. There's also the book that I published, Difficult Lives, which I published this years ago under the Gryphon Books, which takes a look at David Goodis, Jim Thompson, and Chester Himes. And there's also a book on the Harlem series, Harlem Detective series, Two Guns from Harlem, by Robert E. Skinner, which is another excellent book, which unfortunately, I think I have it, but I can't find it. That's the problem of trying to sometimes find all these books and get them together. But I just want to do this as a kind of a remembrance and a tribute to Chester Himes. He wrote some terrific stuff. His books really have impact. His characters ring so true that even today, like 50, 60, 70 years later, it's like they were written yesterday. And really a terrific author. And you gotta try. If you haven't read these, you gotta try them. You're in for a treat if you like hard-boiled crime. So I just wanted to give you this tribute to Chester Himes, one of my favorite authors. I have my own books that I write, and I have my Griffin Fats detective series, with a new book, Hard Cases and Homicide, coming out in the fall. And Griffin Fats are kind of very loosely based on Coffinet and Gravedigger, although, you know, I don't come anywhere near the life experience and the talent of Chester Himes, but it's just another tribute in a sense. But I hope you liked this video, and if you did, give us a thumbs up, share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it, and thank you for looking. We'll see you next time.